Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Please do let us know. Type it into the comment section. We'd love to hear where you're viewing from. Today, I have Kim MacDonald with me, and she's with 13 Factors. I'm going to introduce her in 1 second. I'm in my son's room today. I'm hiding from the dogs barking. So I've got this lovely little dream catcher over here. So catch your dreams, follow your dreams. So 13 Factors is focused on a lot of the same types of things that Civility Partners do. We focus on building positive work environments, and we talk about psychological safety, but that's what you're doing. That's your thing, and you're doing coaching, consulting, investigation. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I define our business as a learning and development business.
Okay.
Working with businesses and organizations. We have a couple of sectors that we focus on, but we also are called into many different sectors that, new sectors all the time. And I want to back up just a tiny bit, because for us, one of the things that you see a lot of conversation right now around either factors and hazards, or psychological health and safety, or psychological safety. So I wanted to pull them apart a little bit.
Let's do it.
Because the differentiation is important and the difference is important. And knowing the difference for any owner, senior manager is really, really important, because they're two separate bodies. And then it's really that the questions are different when you're thinking about them, and the outcomes you're after are different. And so for psychological safety, it really is it's the interaction that you have with others. So I think in our personal lives, and probably in our work lives, we've felt psychologically safe. Mm-hmm. So we've had an interaction or a situation or an event where we felt safe, or we felt in danger or unsafe. Mm-hmm. And so I use that example about our own lived experience, because it's important for us to think about that. It is something that happens with us in our lives. In a workplace, it relates to the culture and the climate that you're trying to create. Mm-hmm. And for many leaders, they create those naturally. But we've seen a lot of the research and a lot of the outcomes for mental health in workplaces, and some of the situations that with unintended these things that happen with consequences that we aren't able to predict. And so if you think about trying to create psychological safety, so it's an outcome of an interaction that you and I have. And so you're working with certain kinds of behaviors and skills and competencies and listening and curiosity, and all of those things together are going to create that interaction so that it's psychologically safe. And so a workplace really wants their managers to be operating in that environment, certainly for organizations that care about well-being and their climate and productivity and all of those other good business outcomes. When we're talking about psychological health and safety, that is an occupational health and safety system. So there's your puppy.
There goes my dog, protecting me from the tree arborist.
Nice. Good job.
So that's safe. Speaking of safety.
Yeah, exactly. That is safe. So you are physically safe, and and it could probably he or she could probably help your emotional safety as well. So occupational health and safety. So safety in workplaces has evolved over time. So if you think back, a long, long time ago, we've got physical safety, then chemical, then biological safety, and all of the managing the hazards around those in workplaces. And psychological safety is another evolution of safety within the workplace, because we now know that, we did a lot of things in the past, and we had a lot of business practices that divided up our whole humanness at work. We left our emotions at the door. We focused on our work. We even had terminology talking about people like assets and capital assets that really separated that they are not a resource and an asset. These are people who show up every day and come to work. And what COVID did, and we are seeing now, which is, I think in August 2019, about 4.7 million people in the US quit their jobs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like a date in history. And so they quit their jobs at that time for more money. And now we know, and we've seen that the great resignation, as some people are calling it, is really around a workplace that values me, understands me, and is really going to take care of my well-being, and also provides flexibility.
Yes,
And
we
that,
just wrote a blog post on that recently. There's tons of research really supporting this from
yeah,
Boston Consulting Group, Pew Research, McKinsey Institute, that really it's based on toxic work environments. And I did have a couple clients who would say things to me like, well, because we'd be talking, of course, about their resignations, and they would say, well, everybody has this problem, kind of like it's just what's happening right now. And it's like, yeah, but it's happening because of the workplace. So if you are one of the workplaces that has attrition, it's because of your workplace. And the blog post I wrote was really around well-being and mental health. And are you looking at your workplace as part of that initiative, or are you just giving people subscriptions to some sort of yoga or meditation app and saying that you've done, we have our steps contest. Everyone get your Fitbit on.
the
And
best
that's
way for any workplace leader to understand what they need to do is to ask a Generation Z.
yeah. They'll tell you.
Hug a millennial or hug a Generation Z, because I am so excited about, and an Xer and a Boomer. Hug them all. However, we do know that there are more than one way. There's more than one way to do things now, and the circumstances and the situation has changed. We had a lot of these work-related stressors before the pandemic. But the pandemic really sharpened the pencil about that, and really told us that we were very adaptable, is one thing it told us. And so they told us we could adapt and we could live with less. It told us a whole host of things, and it shifted something. And now we're into inflation and, prices rising and all those kinds of things. Those are also part of it. So there's a lot more uncertainty, volatility, that, VUCA world that people talk about, is really for organizations to be thinking about that and figuring out, from a psychological health and safety perspective, how can you reduce work-related stressors? And that is the occupational system of putting something in place to look at identify the hazards and the risks, and then do preventative work and actively manage it, so that those unintended consequences don't show up. And don't turn into behavioral norms that then have created a norm in your organization that you didn't really intend. So the invitation for owners and business managers right now is to be much more intentional. And it takes a little bit of courage to recognize that things are different and things are changed. But organizations and managers have all the tools they need. What they do need to do, though, is shift a little bit to some flexibility about what is possible and what strength they have that they can bring to bear. Because right now it's the middle managers that are getting the most pressure.
Yeah.
So
Let me stop you for 1 minute. I just want to mention we have a lot of people calling in or watching us. I say calling in like it's a radio show, viewing from all over the world. We've got Los Angeles, Nashville, Plover, Wisconsin, and everyone's saying hello to everyone. So everyone's feeling very psychologically safe. So that's great. We've got Cornell University, which is my family's alma mater. Many of my family members, not me, Cornell. We've got Canada, Yemen, Nigeria. So thanks all for joining. Please do put in your questions, and we will be sure to get to them. We'd love to answer them. So we've gone down a path, but I want to reel us back. Define psychological safety for us. Give us a one sentence. What is psychological safety?
So it is the experience you have where you feel free to speak your mind, speak out, speak up, be vulnerable, question someone about their opinion without the risk of being harmed, whether it's indirectly or shut down, ignored, dismissed.
And what are the 13 factors that point, that's all related to building psychological safety, right?
Yeah,
So tell
yeah.
us what are some of the, you don't have to name all 13, but what are some of them?
So, so the factors are the evidence-based places that you could take a look at your organization and figure out where are the hazards and the risks within those factors, and then identify and take action to mitigate them. And also from the way a leader is encouraged to behave, you can look at some of the underlying behaviors and competencies that would sort of support those factors. So one of them is civility and respect, which is a huge one, and one that we all take for granted in many ways within our organizations. We're all professional, fairly reasonably polite, trying to be engaged and cooperative and collaborative and all those kinds of things. But it is the one thing that, if I was to encourage organization to really focus on, it would be civility and respect. Because
Mhm.
respect for me and how that shows up for me in my lived experience at work is very different from yours, Catherine, and
Yeah.
very different from every single person who's on this call.
Who's watching? Yeah. I
Yeah,
wanna I wanna pause and just give a
yeah.
real quick tip for everyone. One exercise that we often encourage clients to do, and we do it if we're invited in to do training, is to ask your team, what does respect mean to you? Because everybody wants to be treated with respect. And actually, before that, so this exercise that we do, just to back up, we start off by asking the question, how do you want to be treated at work? And if we're doing it over Zoom, we just tell, which is what we're doing these days. We say, just chat as many things as you can think of. It's not one answer. What are all of the ways that you want to be treated at work? And so then we get this like flurry of chat answers. And you can easily see that respect is, one of the top ones. Everybody's using that word. So then part two is to say, all right, now I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and have you talk about what respect means to you, because it is different, as you've said. And then we can, kind of come back together and figure out what does that mean for our organization. So you can create some guidelines around respect through this very simple, not time consuming exercise at all. And then you can hold people accountable to that, because it's not, respect isn't a policy. We're not requiring people to be respectful. We require them not to harass. We have an anti-harassment policy. But then that provides this kind of document of like, well, hey, we all said this is respect and you're not engaging in that. So just wanted to throw that exercise out there.
I love that. Some of the most effective and highest and best, I use that a lot. Once we get into a lot of work together, Catherine, you'll see that. What is the highest and best that we can do today? I am much more focused on choosing the highest and best for organizations. I used to do marketing strategy, and that was my business and communications. And if you can ask explicit, simple questions around these, and then you'll get your best answers.
Mhm.
And people know, and leaders don't know. Leaders only know about 4% of what's truly the lived experience of
Mhm.
employees within an organization, and that's at the senior level. And then at the manager level, it's probably between 7 and 9%. So there's an entire body of experiences that managers and senior management do not know about and do not understand the experience.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of discussion about empathy within these contexts of psychological safety and the system of psychological health and safety when you're trying to identify hazards. And empathy is one of the things that we talk about. There's lots of training out there on empathy and resilience. And I'm going to be the controversy in the room right now,
Do
because
it.
the challenge for me, and so I'm hopeful that the people in the room also will challenge me back. I would love that. Which
Yes, please.
let's talk resilience. Let's talk resilience. And because the challenge for me with resilience, it is not a skill, it is not a competency. There are a whole set of human competencies and skills within those competencies that will give you all of the things you need to be able to manage and cope. and be able to operate at your highest level, bring your whole self to work. The workplace has to be psychologically safe for you to be able to do that. You have to feel included. We know that marginalized groups in many groups have a lot of factors that come into play. And so they typically are having a lived experience that is different than other people in the workplace. So that inclusiveness, that's all tied into psychological safety and also
Right.
trust. So you can't get a trusting, high trust workplace without having psychological safety.
Right.
So resilience. So we see all of this resilience training, and my concern is with psychological health and safety as a system. You are looking at hazards that are going to harm mental health in the workplace. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to reduce those harms so that your workplace is a psychologically safe place to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down the path of resilience, my worry is the stigma that is attached to mental health right now. And if you have certain types of illnesses, and we all know that there's more stigma on some illnesses than others.
Right.
My mission, personal mission, is to change the way people think about mental health and mental illness and addiction, and show that it's all of us. It is
Yeah.
me, it is you, it is all of us. And certainly we see a lot of all the mental health outcomes. So if we start to say that resilience, oh my goodness, Catherine is so resilient, she's taken the training, she is really resilient, she doesn't have any absenteeism, all these kinds of things, we have just set up, we've taken away, which we had tried to stretch
We've
through
taken away the vulnerability of
the
like,
vulnerability,
it's okay to
taken
be.
away the humanness of being today not being well. Like today, I lost my job. My mom was ill. All of those things, those are all elements of our well-being, and they're going to impact our mental health. So as soon
Yeah.
as we start to do that, we have lost what I think we can gain through some of this vulnerability that we've lived through in the pandemic.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, before COVID, I was talking a lot about, I probably say this every LinkedIn live. I should probably stop saying it. But I'll say it again. Before COVID, I was talking a lot about vulnerability at work in the context of bullying and harassment and saying, hey, HR, here's the problem. We're not supposed to be vulnerable at work. You're not supposed to cry. It makes you look weak. All this stigma around that. If you call in sick, or it's like, oh, you're not, it's like a badge of honor if you work when you're sick, kind of a thing, and push through and be resilient. And it's, that's counterintuitive to having people report harassment or bullying to you. So because it's a vulnerable place to be. So if I'm living in a business where I'm not supposed to cry, I'm supposed to focus on results and objectives and KPIs and goals and all this stuff, where everything's supposed to be so tangible and quantitative, that works against getting people to report something like harassment to you, because not only are you asking them to be a squeaky wheel, you're asking them to violate social norms by reporting. Yep. Yeah. And so with COVID, I think with COVID, I think we became vulnerable. It's like all of a sudden I was like, thank you. Now we can be vulnerable. I'm in my son's room right now, and we're joking about the dog. Like, it's a little vulnerable for me right here. But here we are. And so I agree with you with resilience training, as if you could have that training, but you've got to really wrap it in a big bow of like, also let's have some mental health training about reducing the stigma around that, because while we want you to be resilient, we know you can't be resilient all day, every day. And it's fine if you need to cry. And by the way, part of resilience is being aware of your emotions and being
in touch with them,
express
and
them.
being authentic.
Yeah.
And the more that we can embrace that, and I know with different industries and different, we have a lot of organizations that are struggling with that, and organizational leaders that are struggling with that, but they are not, they can live together. Performance and excellence and human emotion can all live together. And the more we can integrate those, the better off and all organizations will be.
Yeah.
And as humans, we are integrated. And so we had, at our peril, which we've done, created sort of very, very specific business norms about what is acceptable and what is not. And we have an opportunity to create much more inclusive, embracing diversity in all its forms, and creating really strong, amazing workplaces. Because people and workplaces are incredibly important for people. It is on the wheel of well-being, so it is a determinant. Your work, having an economic income to be able to take care of yourself independently, is incredibly important to our mental health and our well-being. And so therefore we know that that's important, but we also know that that workplaces go well beyond the paycheck every 2 weeks. It is a social realm. It is a place to learn and grow and laugh. And even when it's highly stressful, if anyone has ever watched a surgeon in an operating theater and they are having so much fun, they are like, there's another problem. Oh, just give me that. I know it sounds a little bit radical to say that, but they are well suited. So you had asked about the factors. There's one of the factors that is around you or I being perfectly suited for the job. That is having fit for the job. So we don't all fit in every job. So that particular surgeon is well suited for that high stress, high operating, and that person can still experience joy when things are going in that situation, even a little bit awry. So that joy is not, it doesn't separate. We can be joyful.
I hadn't thought about that before. We can laugh at work while we're doing serious things, and surgeons should also be.
That's great. They can sing. They can sing. But that's what we need to be able to sort of integrate back, that there is some bias for people who are serious and who, that whole idea of laughing and that high emotional state is separate from some of our biases around intellect and all of these other kinds of things. And luckily, we have the opportunity to create workplaces that can actually integrate a lot more. Right. And the workplace and the business outcomes will be better for it.
Right. And we're definitely on the same page with all of this. I see Adam says he's sad he didn't get the notification of this record or this show until now. And Adam, I just wanted to mention you can watch it from the beginning. When we're finished, it will just post right there in LinkedIn, and you can watch the pieces that you missed. So what are some of the other 13 factors? So we've got people in the right seats, we've got civility. What else?
Psychological fit, balance. Now, balance is a little bit of a difficult one because, if you look at them, sometimes people say, oh, yeah, sure, balance. My workplace is not balanced. My work-life balance is not balanced. However, I think it is the call of a leader to take a look around and to be managing the workload. And workload management is a key hazard and a factor that has to be organized and well managed, even when the organization is highly busy. All of the things that are happening could be new product development, could be all kinds of launches, whatever it is, you still are required, if you want to keep a psychologically healthy and safe workplace, to manage that workflow. One of the biggest areas, which is around some of that, is uncertainty and the impact of uncertainty on our human bodies and our nervous systems. And I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a colleague, and she was saying that in her workplace, they are senior management. She's in the senior management team, executive team. They are measured on how well they can deal in uncertainty, when everything is uncertain, and ambiguity. And that sounds like a very good thing, that managers are supposed to be able to deal and manage stress very well. Absolutely. However, if you think a little bit deeper on what the unintended consequences of that could be, that if it's at that level, that the uncertainty, that sort of notion about being able to deal with uncertainty is flowing from that senior level down. Yeah. And we also know that uncertainty has an incredibly damaging impact on us. And so the more that an organization can reduce those things with improved communication, with giving people notice for scheduling. Scheduling is is a risk factor and a hazard. So if you only learn that you're scheduled for the next 3 weeks that Friday and you have to come in on Monday, that doesn't give you a lot of time to manage your work-life balance. Right. So the things that we can reduce uncertainty, we can reduce work-related stress. And so there's some things that people do in workplaces that sound very, very good because they are competencies that managers need to have. However, not everyone needs to have that competency.
Right.
And that senior manager should also, people that they report to, they should be reducing the stress and the uncertainty for that senior manager as well. So
can I mention something really quick? Just, I don't know if you knew this, but the research really shows that uncertainty and ambiguous roles and responsibilities is one of the top predictors of workplace bullying. So the more ambiguity there is around your roles and responsibilities, the more likely you are to engage in bullying behavior. And just to kind of comment on that, you mentioned that ambiguity is really difficult on our nervous system. It's an extremely one of the highest stressors for us, which is why life changes are so stressful, right? So what that means is that if you're feeling like you're not sure of your role or responsibility, and possibly the people around you aren't either of theirs or yours, that you're in a stressful place. So then you run out of energy to manage your emotions, and because you're focused on the stress that you're experiencing. And then, so then our propensity to be nice or polite drops, and we start
effect is at risk. And the other piece of that, which sort of circles back to your question about other factors, what are the other factors in? So the factors come into the national standard in Canada. So Canada was one of the early adopters and developers of a national standard for workplace psychological health and safety. And the UK and Australia, so Australia has pulled ahead. So it's not a competition, Australians, but they're doing amazing work.
Yes, they are. That's where a lot of the bullying research comes out of Australia and Canada, and also Sweden and Denmark. So
so Australia has, so we have an international ISO standard that you can use, and workplaces can start to understand and pick from that to be able to put systems in place and to better understand all of the concepts around here. But the ultimate goal of the psychological health and safety strategy and system is to manage impacts and harms to mental health. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is that the good news is that that actually has a whole host of business outcomes that are totally positive. It does feel for many workplaces as a heavy burden to figure that out, but it is, if you can think about it, it doesn't have to be front end loaded, but it's a little bit front end loaded. So it's in the same way that other standards, occupational health and safety standards are, they're front end loaded. Once you get that in place, and you also have all the skills from the physical occupational health and safety, that you already have those embedded competencies. So that's to every organization's benefit. But the other factor that you had mentioned when you were talking about this uncertainty and ambiguity, leader communication and expectations is a risk factor.
The big one as well.
Risk factor, because if you do not understand what your role is, you don't have a lot of communication from your manager, from your leader of your team, then you are working in a really, really challenging place. And so you are, that is a hazard and a risk factor.
That's one of our big questions on our surveys that we do. Kim, we have to go. We are out of time. I really appreciate chatting with you. I see a couple of questions in there that Kim and I can pop in there to answer. And I did want to mention, Kim, before I let you go, I don't know if you knew about the International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment, but this is an organization focused on solving bullying and harassment. It's a lot of academics who've been studying this stuff for 30 years, 20 years, as well as practitioners like you and I, kind of on the other side, focusing on building a positive work environment that doesn't tolerate that type of behavior. So I would love to see you there. So I'm going to post a comment here for everyone, and I'll send you an email with that too. We would love to have you. It's here in the United States for the first time in 26 years. So I happen to be the conference chair, which is why it's in the United States. So thanks all for joining us. Kim will circle back and answer your questions, and appreciate all of you. And it's cool to have so many people from around the world here.